Just when you thought you had the balance of power figured out, a shakeup in the Senate. Senator Kyrsten Sinema announcing this morning she is leaving the Democratic Party.
Well, yeah, a little bit of a political earthquake going on right now. Not too many folks saw this coming, and it does have some pretty interesting ripple effects. So let's start with this story. The Arizona senator, first elected to her first term back in 2018 as a Democrat, now says she will register as an independent, saying she, quote, never fit neatly into any party box. So again, the pivotal senator from Arizona, who's been in a lot of headlines over the last 2 years, is now going to become an independent, leaving the Democratic Party. Congressional correspondent Nate Reed, live for us in D.C. You've used the word before, seismic, in terms of describing this change. It is a big deal. It's more than just the procedural politics issue here. She's leaving the party at a time it thought it had some breathing room after their win here in Georgia just days ago. Then this bombshell overnight. Absence of process and procedure. Talk about a little bit about why this is a big deal.
Well, look, it is a huge deal. And for one, she said in an interview with Politico about this announcement that she was delighted by Senator Raphael Warnock's win in Georgia earlier this week. Of course, he is a Democrat, has the capital D next to his name. He is not someone who is an independent senator. So it's certainly an interesting comment from her. But look, this is a decision that she made. The timing of it is interesting. The fact that she could potentially pick up primary opponents. Ruben Gallego, a Democratic representative from Arizona, is someone who has frequently floated running against her. She made clear in an exclusive interview with CNN this morning that nothing is going to change other than the D Democrat next to her name. Now that will be an I for an independent. Let's listen.
Arizonans sent me to the United States Senate to be an independent voice for our state, and I'll continue doing that. What I think is important about this decision and this move is that I'll be able to show up to work every day as an independent and not be, stuck into one party's demands of following without thinking. And as we've seen in recent years, both parties have created this kind of requirement or a pull towards the edges that you just unthinkingly support all of one party's viewpoints. It's made it difficult to find folks who are willing to work together and solve problems.
And look, this comes just days after Senator Raphael Warnock won his re-election bid, meaning that Democrats were thought to have a 51-49 majority in the U.S. Senate, one seat more than they had for the last 2 years. Now, of course, there are major questions over what that majority is going to look like. It's worth noting, though, a senior Democratic aide tells me this morning, Senator Sinema is expected to keep her committee assignments under the Democrat column. So therefore, Democrats will still gain the majority on all Senate committees that they were expected to gain after they won 51 seats. Right now, because there's equal numbers of Democrats and Republicans in the U.S. Senate, with Vice President Kamala Harris casting that tie-breaking vote in her role as president of the Senate, Democrats have had equal numbers of committee members along with Republicans. Now it's expected that they will still have one more member than Republicans on some committees, potentially even more on others. So certainly this might not functionally look all too different, but it is a seismic shift given that Sinema is no longer going to represent herself as a Democrat. Furthermore, there are two other independents in the U.S. Senate already, Senator Angus King, the independent of Maine, and Senator Bernie Sanders, the independent of Vermont. Both of those independents, though, caucus with the Democrats. They appear at the weekly caucus lunch. Senator Sinema saying that she will no longer go to that. It's worth noting, however, and a couple of journalists have pointed this out, she didn't really go to that lunch all too much anyway.
So, Nate, what is the reaction from Democrats that we're hearing? I mean, for this to be such a seismic shift and such a change, I mean, I'd imagine we're hearing from somebody somewhere today.
Well, look, I don't think that this is going to be all too different. I mean, this news came very early this morning as folks were waking up. The Senate is not scheduled to be in session today. They had their last vote of the week yesterday. A lot needs to be worked out. Of course, government funding is still on the table, as well as the National Defense Authorization Act, which passed the House yesterday, has yet to pass the Senate, is expected to happen at some point next week. And so certainly this is a seismic shift. Democrats are certain that they're going to react. The question is, does this put fuel on the fire of a potential primary challenge for her in 2024. In fact, this raises major questions. For one, if she doesn't run as a Democrat in Arizona, If she faces off with a Democrat in the general election and a Republican, could that siphon away the vote? Certainly this creates a very interesting dynamic as we, of course, head into the 2024 campaign season. And furthermore, a very interesting dynamic for Democrats who just earlier this week, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer was celebrating their 51-seat majority. It's not exactly clear if we can actually use that term anymore. She said in that exclusive interview with CNN earlier this morning, that no one in Arizona cares about that actual vote breakdown, the 51 to 49. I beg to differ, but at the same time, she's made very clear that she is not falling neatly in the party line anymore.
All right, congressional correspondent Nate Reed reporting. Thank you so much, Nate.
And it's so fascinating, too, because we've spent the last 2 years seeing how much power that both Joe Manchin and Senator Sinema had because they were never lockstep with their party, which is their right, of course.
Never a guarantee.
Right. So now when they was up, Democrats up 51-49, they were made, that some of their juice was a little bit limited. But now this move kind of makes Sinema and Manchin very important again going forward. You cover politics, you know that as well as anybody.
Well, and because you had the White House, especially after Raphael Warnock won just this week here in Georgia, saying, this gives them a little bit of breathing room. It's not like it's going to make anything a slam dunk for them, certainly, but it was a little extra. At the same time, you had Republicans who wanted this seat in Georgia because of wanting to keep things more even on the committees. So certainly there is an impact here when you look at potentially the likelihood certain agenda items, their progress there. So really a significant political story this